shoulder to shoulder with Jesus. Watch him hang from the cross, then celebrate his resurrection. This is Reading the Bible Together, Holy Week.
Welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Angela Smith. We are in our series on Holy Week, and today is Maundy, Thursday, and we are talking about Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. And I am very pleased to welcome my very own pastor, Pastor Sean Winters. Welcome, Sean.
Thank you, Angela. It's good to be here, and I'm just honored to be a part of this.
So what's really fun is just yesterday, you actually preached a sermon on this.
I did, and while we're listening to this now on Thursday, it was just yesterday, and it was one of my favorite pieces of this week. You know, we're talking about walking shoulder to shoulder with Jesus and kind of going through this experience with him. This is a significant piece, and I think it's very accessible to us. Mm-hmm. It's very practical, and yet it's also revealing of the deep anguish that Jesus felt in this Holy Week.
Yeah, so let's talk about it. He's in the garden. He's had the Last Supper, or he's celebrated Passover with his disciples. Judas has left to go and betray him, and so now this is that in-between time.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there. You know, he had called out Judas. Judas left. He had said, "Hey, Peter, Satan came and asked me to sift you." And so there's these deep conversations that says what we need to do, the need of the moment. When Jesus knew what was coming next was to spend time with his Father. And so he did as he usually did, went to the Mount of Olives, the Garden of Gethsemane, and invited the disciples to pray with him. And we see Jesus not only just kind of praying with them, but Jesus on his own, deeply anguished and needing to meet with his Father.
Something that really stands out to me in this, too, is that and I think it's because I have a bent to not do this, is that he's asking for what he wants, and he does it 3 times.
Yeah.
And 3 times he asks, and 3 times he surrenders.
Right. It's just remarkable when we pause. We can become so familiar with the story that we kind of forget the details of it. And you're exactly right. So we see in this a pattern of Jesus wrestling with God the Father. So he's coming and he's saying, "Hey, if there's any other way, can this cup pass from me? Is there any other way, Lord?" He understands the big redemption story and where this fits in it. But he's advocating with the Father, like, man, there's got to be a different way. Is there any other way? Because this,
have we thought of everything?
Yeah. And yet, right on cue with that, and I don't think it's probably quick, but it's a part of his posture before God, is to say, "Not my will, but thine be done." And so as we walk with Christ, we get permission to say, "Hey, we can wrestle." Right? Like there's times we all wrestle. Mm-hmm. And yet he has this attitude or this posture of surrender as well.
A few years ago, I did a Passover Seder, which was the first time I had done it, and didn't know anything about the 4 different cups and, all the symbolism and what everything means. And once I did that and then came into the garden and Jesus talking about, "Take this cup from me," that it's the cup that they had just been talking about at Passover, the cup of salvation, which is all the suffering being put on him. And like you said, I think it's really easy to wash over that because we're so familiar and because it's painful. And so at least for me, that's not my natural bend, is to go into pain. Right.
And to realize you're exactly right with that cup and all that it symbolizes. It isn't that Jesus lacked courage. It isn't that it was just about the physical pain that was coming, although it was excruciating, the scorn, the beating, the crucifixion. But it was the whole of what's captured in that cup. It's the coming under the judgment of God. It's to say he who was without sin took on sin. We that can't get things right, all of our mistakes are put on Jesus. And he knows that. He says, this is what's coming. It's not only going to be physically, mentally, emotionally, but it is a profound weight because the judgment that the whole world deserves will come upon me. And that's something that's hard to fathom. But then it makes sense that he says, is there any other way?
Yeah. Yes.
like, can we come up with a plan B? Because this sounds over the top. I can't imagine.
Well, and to think, too, that when he comes back, because he comes back to the disciples
Yeah.
that he brought with him, and they're sleeping.
They're sleeping.
And, he tells them, the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? It's just such a great statement, and to find out where that lands, because I think a lot of people use that phrase, spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. But it finds its meaning in this garden. And Jesus looks at his disciples. He gives them credit, so the spirit is willing. Like I think you have good hearts, but the flesh, somehow you're just not getting it done. You fell asleep. You don't understand the depth of the struggle here. And, we can get critical of the disciples, and yet it's also real that we find ourselves in the disciples. Mm-hmm. That sometimes prayer wears us out. Sometimes the weight of all of the stress wears us out. And it's not a bad thing to sleep, but Jesus said, man, we need to pray. What we need in that hour is to meet our Father.
Well, and I think a good example of that, spirit is willing and the flesh is weak, is Peter.
There you go. Yeah.
When Jesus said to him, you're going to deny me. And I also think it's really interesting that Satan came to him and said, what is it? What's the...
Yeah, can I sift you?
Yes.
Can I sift them?
Yeah. I had missed that many, many times before, but that they will be tested, and how Peter, Lord, I would never.
Yeah.
And
I got this.
Yeah. And then he does.
Yeah.
And actually, I remember in your sermon when you were preaching on Peter's denial of Jesus, and you told the story about Little League and how your mom, I won't say what your nickname is on the podcast.
It was Bugs. Yeah.
How she yelled out, "Go Bugs!"
Yeah.
And you were like, "Is that your mom?"
Right.
And how
I denied my mom.
Yeah. And how easy it is to do that. And so to your point about how easy it is for us that how we can
flesh.
Identify with the disciples.
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah. Our flesh is weak, and we try to hide that as best we can. And in our honesty, though, we don't deny it. Mm-hmm. We say, you know what, I don't live up to my own expectations. And then we sometimes are afraid of the church because we think, well, there are even higher expectations there, or God, what expectations does he have for me? But here's the wonder of the story of Easter is that Jesus sees his disciples, he sees us as we truly are, and he still steps in. And he still loves, and he still paid the price. And then he leaves this amazing example of, we can wrestle with God in prayer, and yet somehow the place we ought to be is a place of surrender. Not my will, but thine be done. And that's just so stirring to me. Sometimes I've entered that, that challenging time with God in prayer where I was ready to just say, hey, not my will, but thine. Like, God, you figure this out. And other times I had a pretty good idea how I wanted it to land. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't so sure I wanted to say, not my will, but thine, because I was pretty impressed with my plan. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's good. Lord, it's good. Like, I just sign off. Don't mess with it. Just sign off with it. I'm good.
That's right. I think about dating relationships as I talk to young people, and I think about my own life. Like, Lord, I want to hold this with open hand, but I really want this to work out. Yeah. But that posture of saying, hey, Lord, I want to hear from you.
And I think that's an important point about prayer too, is that prayer is a conversation. You said this yesterday. Prayer is a conversation. So it's not only us speaking, but it's us stilling ourselves long enough to listen to what he's saying to us.
This is Maundy Thursday, and so we're sitting here on a Thursday, and wherever our listeners might be today, it's a great challenge just to quiet your hearts, be still, and then just say, God, what direction are you leading? I want to know. I want to hear. One author said we have a tendency to bow our heads, close our eyes, and let our minds wander. But it's saying it's not so much bowing the head and closing the eyes. It's to say, I want to be still and I want to hear. I want to be in your presence, God. And I have an open heart.
Well, and what I was thinking about when you said that quote, instead of wandering, wonder.
Huh?
Like go into a posture of wonder about who God is. And
that's right.
And it sounds really trite to say that his plan is better, especially when you're in the midst of a hard time.
Yeah.
But just speaking from experience and walking through hard times and getting to a place where I could see that his plan was better
Yeah.
than it is. And I think that maybe that's why Jesus was able to endure what he endured.
Yeah.
Because isn't it in Hebrews that he endured because of, he endured the cross?
Yeah, scorning its shame, and then he sat down at the right hand of the throne of God.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a high priest. And some would say probably the hardest work he did was in the garden. You know, and because of the work that he did in the garden, he was able to face the next, 24 hours, the trial, the scorning, the beating, the crucifixion, because he had met with God and he had confirmed in his mind, this is the plan. So, there's a number of things in that says when we know the will of God, it doesn't mean that there's no more pain. This was an entrance of pain. And just because we know the will of God doesn't mean that it's going to be easy or people are going to understand.
Or that surrender is a one-time thing.
Yeah,
Because Jesus had the power to make it stop at any point along the way.
Yeah.
And he continued to surrender to the process of what was happening.
Yeah. A great point. I mean, they said, hey, you could call down angels. Do it now. Call down angels. And, he was committed to the plan. He was committed to the redemption story that God had foreordained and that Christ had a key role in. So where we find ourselves in that, how do we walk with Jesus on this Thursday, this Maundy Thursday? It is to pause, I think, and whatever it looks like to enter the garden in our minds and just say, I need to spend some time praying the prayer. Jesus said, pray so you not fall into temptation. Okay, I'll hear that, listen to that. Then he said, this cup, man, Lord, what is that cup right now for Angela, for Sean? And our true desire, Lord, this cup, man, it can pass from me. Be honest and engage in that. And then, how then do you move from identifying that cup of need, the cup of challenge, to this posture of surrender? What does that look like for you?
In my experience, it's been the continue. That's the thing that always comes back. It's the continuing. Like Jesus is living, ing, he's ongoing. Yeah. And that when I made my first dying to self and living for Christ, that wasn't a one-time thing, that it's a continual. Mm. And surrender is contrary to my being.
My nature,
Yes.
That's right.
Yes. And so sometimes even when I say the word surrender, it just makes me sweat.
Yeah.
But I've walked with the Lord long enough now to have seen his faithfulness through things.
Yeah.
And having that history, kind of those Ebenezers, those remembrances, makes it a little bit easier to surrender because I know that he's good. And it's not feel good. It's a deeper good. It's like Aslan. Is he safe?
Yeah.
No, but he's good.
But he's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And surrender can sometimes feel like, that's not fair. Like, I was mistreated and I'm supposed to surrender. I wasn't listened to and I'm supposed to surrender. And surrender has a lot of vulnerability. There's just this reality that says I can't come with my own merits. I can't, deliver my own resume or my curriculum vitae. So here's all the things that should impress you with. Surrender. It's coming with empty hands, saying, Lord, I'm going to trust you and I'm going to walk in obedience to you and I'm going to believe you. So
and do the work to follow.
Yeah.
And do the work to know him. Yeah.
What you said was just so good, that he is living, that he is ongoing. And man, it's a process and it's a daily choice. There's a significant point where we trust in Christ alone for our salvation, but there's probably 47 decisions before that day, and there's like an unbelievable number after that day of continually saying, Jesus, I'm following you.
Well, and surrounding yourself with people who are willing and who will love you well enough to tell you the truth of a situation. Like when I've gone through hard times, I've had people say, look for God. When I was going through a time of grief, they said, look for God because he's there. He might move in small ways, and if you're not looking for him, you might miss him. Yeah. And I was so grateful that they said that, because then I could open my eyes and see what he was doing, and I would have missed it.
Yeah.
And
you might not
blinded by my own
always have
pain.
been ready for that.
Right.
Right? Like you're like, no, I'm just, the grief is so heavy.
Mm-hmm.
But you need those people in your life that'll encourage you, challenge you, and even kind of maybe pick up the chin a little bit, say, look ahead.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Is there anything else about the Garden of Gethsemane you want to make sure that we talk about?
As we look at Maundy Thursday and all the events that took place on this day, we need to see that Jesus saw what was coming and he entered it voluntarily, that he chose to go to the garden where he would be vulnerable, where Judas would know where he's at, where they could arrest him quietly and away from the crowds. But he said, I need to go meet with my Father. And so he went, and by choice, by discipline, by intentionality, he said, what I need for this moment, what I need for this challenge, for this cup, is to spend time with God. I need to not just say a quick prayer and then get on with the rest of the agenda. I need to just rest in his presence. And so that would be my encouragement, that we would rest in his presence. And if that's foreign to you, that doesn't seem real comfortable, God doesn't ask for any prerequisites. He just says, come. If we draw near to him, he'll draw near to us.
And it makes sense. It's natural for it to feel a little awkward in the beginning.
Yeah, that's right. And even for those who are listening who are maybe seasoned believers, they've been walking with God a long time. I would challenge you this Holy Week to just say, have you spent time just quietly before God? That the need of your life, can you just bring it before God and with open hands say, not my will, but thine be done? And then pause and be with your Father who loves you dearly.
They're called spiritual practices because we have to practice them.
That's right. Yeah, there's no spiritual perfections. There's spiritual practices.
Exactly.
I love it.
Thank you so much, Pastor Sean. This was really good. I'm gonna chew on this for a while.
Thank you, Angela. I appreciate it. Appreciate what you're doing with this study. It sounds great, and I'm looking forward to hearing it as well.
Well, thank you for joining us for Reading the Bible Together podcast, this conversation about the Garden of Gethsemane. Make sure that you subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any episodes, and we will see you tomorrow.
The Reading the Bible Together podcast is a production of Faith Radio and Northwestern Media. Hosted, produced, and edited by Angela Smith. If you've enjoyed this podcast and want to hear more, consider financially supporting Faith Radio. Find more information at myfaithradio.com.
On the latest episode of the Wow God Stories podcast, we go to Africa.
I was raised in Sierra Leone in a community that truly lived the phrase, it takes a village.
Until one day, the world outside Anita's village broke in.
I didn't grow up in a war zone, but I watched one unfold in the country I love.
God brought hope to her story and many others through radical provision.
God began to direct us towards Uganda, Africa.
I was born and grew up in the countryside of Ethiopia.
Nanja and I met in Kigali, Rwanda.
Discover how God showed up in the middle of war, loss, and impossible odds in Africa. Stories that'll make you say,
Wow, God.
Wow, God.
Wow, God.
Wow, God Stories, wherever you get your podcasts.